Learning to Read by, or Learning to Write by Reading. I'm JMac, and the concept here is no one gets specific when they use the old truism that a writer should read a lot. Yes, you do learn just by osmosis. If you are a voracious reader, you will learn something you can apply to your writing. I'm going to get specific about things with this presentation. If you have any ideas, please see me. If there's time, hand up. If not, catch me in the hall, because I do actually collect these. But in the program book, it says, I have a writing tip you will get nowhere else. And any other presenter would probably save that for the end, but I'm going to be a nice guy and I'm going to lead with it. And that is, hold on, ability to read for enjoyment as long as you can. There's reading critically and reading for fun are two different things. And professional readers complain profusely that they lose the ability to read just for fun. They are so used to critical reading. These are people like proofreaders, editors. They can't turn it off anymore. So consciously, for as long as you can, retain this ability. Nearest thing I've heard to how you do this is you make a conscious effort to turn it off. And for a while, you still will be able to. But the difference between the two is one is intellectual and one is more emotional. And reading for fun, when you come to a good bit, your reaction will be like, ooh, I like that. And when you're reading critically, it's more like, I see what you did there. And if you have time, actually everything should be read twice. Nobody's got that. If you do, go ahead and read it. And just read it for fun on the first pass. If you notice ooh, I like that, go back to read it the second time more critically. Try and figure out what they did there. And if you like that bit enough, that goes on your bucket list. That is a wish list item. They did that thing and it was cool. I want to do that someday. And you now have a goal. You will have a list of things you'd like to do in your writing career. And I'm going to give you an example by telling you of something I crossed off my list. Okay, now this is Demarche from Demarche, which is a story in the Presidents. You may not be able to find this easily because this came out in the 80s. Now, the story is okay, but it has the best opening sequence I have ever read. Naked, the president lay on the table. Seeing his customers distressed, the masseuse eased up on the pressure. I thought, you know, and I just thought that was wicked cool. I wanted to do that too. And you go through and you critically examine what they've done there until you know what they've done there. It says basically it's a bombastic opening line with a double meaning. And a mundane follow-up, and hilarity ensues. And this one I got to cross off my buck second. This is my opening line. The Phillies flew through the night sky screaming and hanging on for dear life. But eventually the ride came to an end. The roller coaster came to a stop. And the girls all I done that thing. And as you start acquiring things that you want to do, you too will get to cross your bucket list. That's what I got. Okay. Now, you writing career, you're going to create your comfortable space. What it looks like is going to be personalized. Your mileage will vary. No two writers' process is going to be the same. There's no rule as to what your process should be. But be it a desk or a comfortable chair, an easy chair, if you can write with the TV on, go to it. I can't. But wherever you create your writer's space, you'll probably have a bookshelf. And on this, you should put a good dictionary and a good thesaurus. For the look of it, you'll never use them. You'll go to the internet for all that. And there should be one and only one how-to book on that shelf. Strunk and White's The Elements of Style. This is the only writing book you'll ever need. And I personally am not a big fan of how-to books for writing. They're basically unreadable textbooks. If you're going to get a textbook, you can't learn from it unless you have an instructor. You might as well take writing courses if you're still in school, or check out your local junior college and see if there's some creative writing courses they offer in their continuing education program. This is the only book I would consider having on my shelf and consulting unless it was an assigned classroom text. Possibly you might download a copy of Pixar's 23 Rules of Storytelling, fold it up, and use it as a bookmark in your elements. Because that's actually really good. But otherwise, no, I would not get anything else. Well, there is an exception. Stephen King's On Writing. And the reason why is because it's not just a writing primer, it's also his autobiography. Better than a how-to book is a good autobiography. Anything a writer has written about themselves is basically they're not going to tell you how to write, but they're going to talk about writing and the inspirations and the factors that went into making them the writer they were. You're basically going to get the same thing you get if you attended a live panel that they were presenting. A good autobiography of an author is much better than. Here's a couple examples of my favorites. Fred Pohl did everything in the writing business. He was a writer, an agent, an editor, a publisher. He did it all. And he has a lot to talk to you about what being a writer is. That's hard to find. Another good one is James Hogan's Mind, Machine, Evolution. This is actually both an autobiography and an anthology. He stuck all the short stories he couldn't collect and put anywhere else in that and introduced them all. And that goes to another suggestion I have. Always read the introduction. Do you want to skip the introduction when you sit down with the novel because you want to start the novel? Do not do this. Read the introduction or the foreword if it's not written by the author. This is basically a little autobiography specified with what went into writing the specific piece you have in your hand. And if you come across a connections to all of the stories. Score that, even if you don't like the author, because that is gold. That will tell you, that will give you ideas, and it's a better answer than you'll get anywhere else of where ideas come from. Where did I get my ideas? The answer is everywhere. However, an interesting answer, a better question is, where did you get the idea for fill in the blank? And often there's an interesting story there, and often that will be answered in the introduction. Okay, but moving on to specificity here. Also on your writer's bookshelf, you should have this. And this is how you learn writing tricks of the trade. This, a critical reading of the Watchmen is a master class in story, non-standard, non-linear storytelling. Alan Moore pulled every trick in the book in this and invented some specifically for the Watchmen. Everything, bookending, double meaning of words, callbacks, continuing themes. It's wondrous. It's absolutely brilliant, and I personally feel that all aspiring writers should get a copy of The Watchmen and read it critically.
It's a shame the author doesn't acknowledge this piece anymore.
Okay. That's for literary storytelling. For description, I would suggest you should try reading romantic poetry. I would suggest Shelley. Some people would say Byron. I think he's kind of a jerk myself, you know. But he turns some people on. Now, first off, you ought to decide where on the spectrum you are as a descriptionist. And description runs the spectrum from beige to purple. I'm a very beige writer. I only do functional description. It's one of my greatest flaws. Now, you really ought to hit the center. I find purple writing unreadable, quite frankly. It's a waste of my time. But if the romantic poets speak to you and you get the imagery they're presenting to you, you might be able to write purple and make it entertaining. It's a separate art, being able to do description for description's sake. If and get the reader to read it instead of skipping down to where you discuss plot again. Now, not everybody likes poetry. There is, if you're interested in studying description, there is an alternative. And the best descriptionists in the writing world, I believe, are the hard-boiled detective fictionists, the noir guys. And because these guys got the souls of poets. I mean, even Mickey Spillane, just because he appeared in a beer commercial doesn't mean he doesn't have the soul of a poet. I assure you, he does. And a critical examination of anything in this genre will teach you a great deal about how to do description. Okay. For world building, I am going to get really specific. There is a single short story that I think is the finest and the rest of the world is the same. And that just doesn't happen. If you introduce a concept like magic or poetry, the world changes. I mean, and so the masters of this are, of course, fantasy and science fiction writers. And they're also the ones who fall down to to the plot holes of bad world building. Although that's usually media space opera where you see a lot of that. For instance, Star Trek has this marvelous replicator technology, and the only industry that's embraced it is food service? Really? But the problem with good world building is you got a lot of exposition you gotta do. And really, in answering all the questions and making clear you don't have plot holes, you haven't explored all the possibilities of the thing you've invented and introduced in your story, and how it changes the world in little and big ways, you are going to have a notebook with 3 or 4 times as much material as you're going to be able to use in your writing. You should have it in your head, even if it never comes out on the page. You should have explored it that thoroughly if you do the kind of speculative fiction that requires world building. The problem with this is you've got to avoid the wall of text. You need somehow a kind of framing device that allows you to introduce your ideas and tell the audience, your reader, how the world is different. And the best example of doing that without resorting to wall of text is Larry Niven's Flashcraft, which I believe is 20 pages long. It's in several of his collection. I know it's in Flight of the Horse. And the marvelous technology that is introduced is teleportation. And it introduced things like how do you, if they also have the internet in this universe, and internet and teleportation, people show up because they tweeted about a flash event happening. Now imagine if you could come from anywhere in the world. You wouldn't have a flash crowd, you would have a riot. And unfortunately, a roving news guy who is connected to the internet begins the story by triggering such an event. And he spends 24 hours to clear his name. So he goes around looking at teleportation all over the world and what it has done and what it has changed. And how it's applied. For instance, it's used in desalination. Salt water is brought into a big container. All the air in it is teleported out. And in vacuum boiling it, you get fresh water.
That's how they do it. Really?
And it's just marvelous. And it will tell you how to do your world building.
And you said it explains all this in just 20 pages.
Yeah. A good framing device can give you a shortcut. Okay. Okay. Some of us need to work on our dialogue. My suggestion is watch TV. The television writers are the masters of the spoken word. There are a lot of good ones. West Wing, Deadwood, The Good Place. These are dialogue-driven shows. but the best I've ever came across is Sports Night. And you can find it on Netflix. The characters are all wits as they're producing this late night sports show, and they banter wittily at each other. And it's infectious, actually. My wife and I, after watching one of this thing, would be banting at each other for another hour afterwards. I kid you not. But pay attention to the equivalent of critical viewing as opposed to critical reading. Get an idea of what they, as the characters are speaking, and you will learn how to do dialogue. And I have come to the end. Yeah.
With the TV thing, it would be worthwhile to read scripts.
Yes, actually. That actually answers my subject or my contention that you have to do the equivalent of reading critically as you're viewing. If you're reading the script, you're reading critically. So yeah, that would absolutely work. And again, I collect these things. If you know of a specific story that you felt taught you something good about something you wanted to learn how to write, please come and tell me about it. About that. An example of world building is a much maligned short story on film fiction called Rainbow Burger. Now, just saying the name of it, you're all probably thinking this is some kind of Cupcakes clone. It is, unfortunately, people who didn't read the story hounded the poor guy in commentary, and he ended up canceling it and leaving the fandom, I think. Unfortunately, it's brilliant world building. It did. It is the story of Pink Amina, not Pinky, because she lives in a dystopia, and a lot of people writing dystopian fiction go straight collapse, and they skip the intermediate stages. Rainbow Burger is written in the first stage of the fall. The urban is humanity is ported in. We have made contact with Equestria, and we have promptly begun to do. We pave it. Humans ever Equestria, and poor Pinky, here no longer floofy, works a job she hates. She does the drive-in window at Rainbow Burger. And it's only 3 chapters before he quit in despair, but it's a great example of world building. Does anybody have any questions? Because we are way ahead of time. Yeah, go ahead.
So I guess when you write fan fiction, I guess what kind of, do you have a goal, do you think about what the, do you think about what the meaning of this is, or is that more of a usage? Because, people can tell us, here's what I think this show needs to be, or what this needs to be, and with writing, is it more think, oh, here's what I think this, do you always feel like, when you write this story, I should know what it means, or is that more something that you come along as you're writing it?
I discover meaning after the fact a lot. I'm actually kind of shallow in that. Is I just want to get on with telling a good story. I'm not that interested personally in being meaningful. Into and above the often simplified morals that you get in the story. I do include that. I personally mostly write safe for work kids fiction, rated everyone. And I've written several stories for my Philly OC and her growing up. And no, I personally don't concern myself with deep, but works again. Every writer has a process. Your mileage will vary. If starting with meaning inspires the idea that becomes your story, so be it. Do it that way. That's legit. Anybody else? Yeah.
You mentioned that for the kind of world building where you change one thing and it ripples.
Right.
Do you have any suggestions? I mean, I have my own ideas, but do you have any suggestions for something where you're world building from the ground up? I'll let you.
Think of how think about how it could possibly change every. Don't think of one of the things they explore in Flash Crowds is what universal easy teleportation does to the airline or even to airport. There are no jet traffics. The airlines are running customs these days. They're buying teleport booths instead of jets. They had to survive. The great airports are abandoned places where only commercial or private pilots live. That's what we would think about in thinking about teleportation. They just would like getting around. It explored how teleportation led to urban blight. There were documentaries about how nice some places were, suffered greatly from the advent of teleportation. Squatters were coming all over because if you're homeless, it's a live in Milwaukee. You know, as one guy put it, I had this great, and I can do nothing with it because it is filled with squatters. Please stay home. Fiji is closed. They offered a solution to this. One of the places that isn't destroyed by teleportation and overcrowded tourism, Easter Island. They refused to build a teleport booth there. You still have, in this universe, if you want to see the moai of Easter Island, I don't question, have I? Yeah. I think I kind of stepped all around your question, but didn't really answer it.
Yeah, no. The idea being that with like Flash Crowd, there is that one relatively small change. What if teleportation? But what about if it's just not there was not an established setting? You're ground up. Here's a new world.
Mm-hmm.
So you're calling us in.
I would say you do it backwards. Is you start with the world you want and then retrofit it to make sense. If you want to speak for a species to evolve that's got two heads, well, write about a species that's got two heads and then come up with a evolutionary justification for two-headed beings to evolve. From the ground up, there's going to be things you want to do in your world. Well, go ahead and do them, and then go back and justify them. I would retrofit the rationale. I would go ahead and do that work, but I would retrofit the rationale to fit the story that you want to write. And you want to build. You have something in mind, I assume.
Yeah, I mean, the one author I know of that does that particularly well, like Brandon Sanderson, right? The contemporary writer, does a lot of fantasy stuff. Is for Starlight Archive.
Oh, yeah, I have that.
He's particularly, but I was just curious if you had any other recommendations. If you had a weakness, he's also a very functional writer, not very poetic.
Okay, I am beige, and I'm not ashamed of the fact. I have been known to take it too far. I have several OCs I have never described. I have never stopped and told the reader what my character looks like. Curiously, I did a poll in my blog on FimFic, asking what you think she looks like. And they were very nearly unanimous. She is a country sheriff character, and everybody agreed. She's kind of khaki colored, like the color of a sheriff's blazer and uniform, sheriff's blouse. She is the color of Andy Griffith's uniform. We all independently came up with that, and I never said. I really ought to say. But just cannot get to a place in my head where it's essential for the reader to know. It's so important. I have to stop telling the story and do a paragraph or so of what the character looks like. And the dilemma I have, I write sometimes in first person. How often do you, when you're speaking, do you describe yourself? I feel description of this sort in first person narration is really clunky. And I can't actually do anything else here. Yeah, go ahead.
I just noticed something. For when you put down for writing dialogue, you suggest watching TV. Is it really just limited to just TV? Is there a difference in, say, kind of like movies? Movie writing?
Not really, no.
No?
Well,
Is there
I
about...
think TV may be better in dialogue because I find there's more dialogue-driven content in television than in movies. They're more action-driven.
Okay.
A general rule, and you know what they say about general rules. All general rules are wrong. You should remember that statement should we ever have to face our robot overlords and we need to burn out Norman circuits, you know. Wait, if that all general rules are wrong, but that is a general rule and therefore it is not wrong. Yeah. Okay, we're very early. I am done, I'm afraid. Thank you.
That was good.
Thank you. Oh,
I
yeah.
was trained in that when I was a steam
Oh.
plant when I was younger. So as soon as you did, I thought all the equipment would all move, you know, so with heat, spark my imagination on the roll. Just in that 2 seconds when you mentioned that.
I didn't know it was vacuum boiling. I knew it's power intensive. Only like oil producing nations like Aruba and Saudi Arabia do it a lot.
Usually steam plants, and they couldn't use the steam going to a venturi, and that draws off, creates a vacuum. And then when it flash boils, it goes up into just like little metal strainers.
and that comes in, goes through that, and that's where it separates.
Oh, okay.
So it's.
I didn't know that. Well, in the Flash Crowd universe, actually, yeah, they teleport the air away and whoosh.
Very good.
Mhm.
I had one, not really family related question, I just missed it earlier. Elements of Red, was that something?
Strunk and White.
I
can get that.
It's small. I don't want to keep like the power cell stations. I'll admit it. I feel very pleased that Watchmen.
Well, it's in my Google Slides.
Well, I mean, I was part of the crowd at the Arthur meetup that did like the whole following. So, yeah, double on Although I am pleased that Watchmen.
Oh, absolutely.
I read
It's
that
so
last
brilliant.
year. That was fantastic.
Absolutely.
I've been kind of obsessed after last year.
Oh no, if you react with "I wish I'd done that," you would stop and do that at least once for every chapter in the Watchmen.
Oh yes. Unfortunately, it's a shame that Alan Moore has a distaste for becoming too popular.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like he just doesn't even know. He's a very high value of like graphic novels.
Yeah.
That he despises people taking his stuff and trying to turn it in. And the thing with that is that he did this while working at DC Comics, but he wanted to keep the property. Apparently, trickery and the contracts that they maintained the rights. And so from that day forward, he's remained bitter about it. And as Watchmen got all adaptations, like the movies and the TV show, he's like, you know what? I don't.
Sounds like a medicine type between the heroes.
Yeah, he totally noped out.
Yeah, and apparently if you go to this convention of redesigned books, those Watchmen books are.
Oh wow.
I wasn't either. Yeah. But yeah.
But it is the storyteller's art. It is crafted. And their chapter is symmetrical.
Yes, chapter 5.
Yes, a fearful symmetry.
Yeah.
Again, from a poem by Robert Blake.
Oh, my favorite moment is stop me. I did this 30 minutes ago or something like that. That's hard.
Sometimes there's one chapter where they're looking at the break-in that ends Median's death, and the captions are Silk Spectre and Owl having talking over dinner.
Oh, yeah. What do you expect?
And their mundane conversation fits the picture.
Yes, it's
brilliant. It is the ultimate in double use of words.
Yeah, Ben, thanks to Dave Gibbons for putting that visual.
Yeah.
I love that. And I've also read the multi-stop. So, you said I felt like I wanted to share a couple other
Oh, I'd love to. I can find my notes.
Because I got one too. I was going to share with you.
Oh.
Because it's got one of the best opening lines I ever read. And it's on my 75th birthday. I did two things. I joined the army and I visited my wife's grave.
Scalzi.
Yes.
Yes.
I love
Scalzi.
Yes.
Yes.
That's my favorite story.
There are two stories that, although I can't quote them, they kind of stuck in my memory here. Middle school years where I was at like classical work, and A Prayer for Owen Meany by John Irving. It's like a prayer for Owen, and Meany is M-E-A-N. This here is this other character, this other boy that grows up in the same neighborhood as Owen Meany. Owen Meany is a kind of a weird person. He's like very small. He also is very intelligent. He's at like rapid intelligence growth, and he has all this weird details. And one of the, because I know like when Owen Meany accidentally kills the narrator's mother with a fast foul ball in the head.
Oh.
But that's one of many things. But it goes all the way. It bounces around from like their childhood to their college years to when the Vietnam War happens, and they also go up to avoid the draft. And there's just something about the way it's both organic but also And I remember because like Owen was small enough that at that point, in his early years, that they considered just being him playing Jesus, while one of the other elementary school girls was Mary. And there was a moment they were doing the scene like the way in the manger thing, where the narrative the audience and everything seems like almost holy, peaceful. But then all of a sudden, Owen just looks at the audience. What are you doing here? This is wrong for you to be here. It's sacrilegious for you to be here. And we don't find out until like many chapters later that he was referring to seeing his parents being there. And I'm not going to spoil the details.
Okay, and the author?
John Irving.
Oh, okay.
John's regular Irving is like IRVING.
I've heard of it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That was on a list
Right.
of 100 books to read of classics. And that one got a lot of good things like Over a Clock of Orange, those things stuck to me. And then one other that is actually not really it's not a contemporary novel, it's sort of like something you find in the humor section. It's called A Zombie Survival Guide by Max Brooks.
Oh, I
I've
love
read
that.
that.
Same guy.
Actually, I own that myself.
Yes, like because like zombie fantasy stuff, it's so seriously like does so well.
Have you read the original unabridged version of World War Z?
Oh God, I should use that as a world building example.
Exactly.
Oh, why didn't I never think of that?
Because if you read the original, I actually have the unabridged audiobook even because I wanted the unabridged version.
I know a history. I know of history teachers who use that as a way to trick kids into learning contemporary history.
Oh yeah.
I can't say for certain whether I read the original.
The book is really well done.
Yes.
It's just there's parts that just make you wait a minute. It's like the one short story where he was interviewing the pilot who crashed and talks about she was talking on the radio, and then they find out the radio never worked. Yeah. So was the radio really not working, or was she hearing a voice in her head? You really don't know, or was it?
That experience about that book, I do right. That was my first one where like I can't turn the critical writing off. This was that book because I love it. It does the world building so well, but he has a he uses the same narrative voice throughout, even though it's supposed to be much different people.
Well, yeah, but he's kind of point of view character.
But it's supposed to be them talking, and they're always using the same terms of phrase in the same ways. It's not a major thing.
I think they have more variety of voice than that, frankly. But
I don't
I'm
think
not
it
going to
takes
fight
away
you.
so much from it, but it's just that was the first time I wish I could unsee this.
And it occurs to me now, I actually wanted to bookend this with, I opened with the I did that. I have an I did that that I wanted to close with, and I totally forgot it. And it actually refers to the Sports Life show. This isn't from reading. And I'll try and get through this quickly because it requires a lot of background. Okay, host character Casey has an unrequited crush on his producer Dana, whom nobody except Dana likes. Casey is satisfying himself by having a relationship with another show producer, Sally, who is kind of the town pop. It's I guess bitter sex, because he's not very nice to Sally, because he's in love with Dana. Anyway, but while he's seeing Sally, there's this subplot that Casey can't find his shirt. He knows he left it in Sally's apartment, but he cannot find his shirt anywhere, and he keeps coming in. And this is a C plot. This is nothing. This is barely background material.
But that one episode.
And then at the very end, Casey takes Dana's fiance aside. And says, "I know you've been seeing Sally behind Dana's back. C plot collides with the A plot, like a freight train.
Oh, that is great.
That is
And
awesome.
you know, the missing shirt was actually a Chekhov's gun, and you never knew it. I actually succeeded in doing that with my fourth story. It's about a naturalist doing a tour of a safe portion of the Everfree Forest. He wants to show them an example, and he snatches a frog off a tree, which ends up sitting on his head, which happened to Jack Hanna, you know, probably he more pisses on it. He's Foles in the Cheerilee's class, this frog, and as an example of not everything is red of tooth and claw in the Everfree Forest. Several chapters later, the naturalist's son, who is running from diamond dogs who are poaching in the Everfree, needs some way to distract them so they can go away. And he says, guys, you remember what Dad told you about the giant Everfree tree frog and how it was different from the giant flying vampire frog? The thing he left out is giant flying vampire frogs collect in large flocks. They're not solitary. He reaches out and he grabs a frog off a tree and he throws it at the lead diamond dog. What? You threw a frog at me? Who does that? Wait, no, get it off me! You know? And then the rest of its flock hear the feeding cries and descend on the diamond dog.
Wow.
You know? And you know, in the opening scene, it was just a goofy thing about a frog on the character's head. You didn't know that was going to come back, you know.
Right.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. If you have a wish list of things you like that somebody else did, it's not unoriginal to have a goal back and do it
I don't
yourself.
feel so bad about the way I
Actually,
ended my main story that I just got done with. There was an episode of MASH I really liked. It was with Klinger, had a high fever the entire episode. And he kept seeing like ghosts around the dead soldiers that died. And at the very end, it shows all these spirits walking up the road.
all right, where we go?
You know exactly what
Yes.
I'm talking about. That is one of my all-time favorite passions. And the way I entered my story is my character, she dies of old age. All the questions, she dies of old age. And she's family and where are we going next? Well, it's this way, toward the left. And then she goes and disappears with her friends, her family, her birthday. So that was.
Yeah, don't sweat originality. Originality happens. I mean, if there were sameness of themes, that one is not original, then you could do writing contests because we're all working to one prompt. But 50 writers writing to one prompt come up with 50 original stories. They all have the sameness of the one plot, but that sameness does not mean lack of originality.
Worst things I remember that from back when it first aired on TV.
By the way, you know,
Yeah.
I've been collecting a lot of autographs for like content creators, like all kinds of people, like writers, musicians.
Well, I have your horse thing, but
Yeah, pretty good. I noticed that like the first story is like 30,000 views.
yeah, but that's only chapter 1. Chapter 2 only has 6,000, so I don't have a.
Yeah, wherever you can find room here, whichever one.
Oh, yeah. I can go there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Here.
Thank you. But well, the easiest one I can get to is I did end up getting a collected Shakespeare works. I can easily check out Shakespeare's sonnets at some point. And you got my recommendation for the old meanings?
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's. And hey, if anybody wants to geek out about Watchmen times.
Actually,
I need to find a bathroom and step outside.
I think you always read the comic first. I think the movie's okay.
between chess and checkers. You know,
Yeah,
the
okay.
movie is
But
is
the graphic novel is a must read. Also, fun fact: in 2005, Times Magazine made a best 100 novels of the century. Watchmen was the only graphic novel to get on that list.
Wow, I'll definitely have
And
to
that's
do that.
along the same.
Well, thank you
that's
guys
the,
for the
that's
recommendation.
the same list that has like Lord of the Rings, 84, all that stuff.
I just want to say one last time, thank you very much for your time today, sir, and I look forward to seeing you at the next time.
you're welcome.
Yeah.
I want to say
Thank
thanks for
you.
doing